Hello, 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 and welcome in to Beyond the Den. We are back this week, presented by Bear Claw Media. I am Chris Bolin, joined as always by Ben Schleiger. He's rolling remote this weekend, sitting outside a hotel in South Denver, but my man's dedicated. So, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I got up early just for you, baby. But hey, got a shout out. We're at Town Place Suites by Marriott. Fantastic experience. Definitely gonna have to ask them for advertising. But dude, the breakfast today, cheese omelets and French toast sticks, plus your other normal assorted package stuff. But I was like, damn, cheese omelet? Like I've never seen that as a hotel breakfast thing. So shout out. That was delicious.
Shout
Um,
out.
but yeah, feeling good. Salty about the Bears, but you just found a quote from Brendan Marion and their disgusting
They're,
defeat that
they're
made us all
salty
feel
too.
a little bit better. It's just like when you're playing an FBS team, you just really have to beat them decisively, and I think that's pretty poignant across the board. So unfortunately, that still stings. It stings for them too because they had a bad loss against Nevada that they shot themselves in the foot 3 to 5 times. But yeah, across the FCS, things are shaping up and teams are definitely taking steps forward. Some that we did expect to take steps forward, and others we didn't. Kind of on our radar for later in the season. South Dakota takes another nasty nosedive, and then also kind of a dark horse team, which who knows if they can compete with anybody in the top 15. But Tennessee Tech, they came out and put their opponents in the dirt this week, and it was like, wow, 45-14, I believe. Really didn't expect that. Tennessee Tech, really one of those FCS teams on the rise. Definitely a back half of the 25 type team, but somebody watch out for the rest of the season. They made some noise last year, late on, so that's kind of one of my teams I'm keeping an eye on. There's other teams out there where, Villanova, they're floating around, Richmond's floating around, Lehigh is what Lehigh is. So, there's interesting stuff, but I think the Big Sky had enough drama this week that we can kind of spotlight them, especially as they had the marquee game of the week. South Dakota State in the news again with a win.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say you mentioned a lot, but you didn't mention probably the most important game of the week. But you snuck it in there at the end. I think something happened with the stat keeping. Maybe the FCS is just not prepared for overtime because, like, no matter where you look for this score online, like the general Google search will tell you it ended 3-0. The Big Sky website says it's still slated to kick off at 6 p.m. in Bozeman. So I think, but final score, it did go 2 OTs. South Dakota was able to pull it out over Montana State, but I think it showed why it was a top three matchup. I don't think either of us got too much time to actually watch this with me at CSU and you doing the wedding thing, but it just a classic possible game of the season from everything I've seen. Just one of those where I'm sad. This is one of those days where I like am bummed that I do the UNC stuff because it just completely kills your ability to watch other football games.
But I mean, if you have ESPN Plus, you can go back and watch a lot of these.
It's
I know
true.
it's not as much fun because we already know the result, but I think this game is a melted butter version of what it was a couple years ago. Still a great game, still thrilling, still went 2 overtimes, just a bit more mellow, a bit more, a couple ice cubes in the tea per se. Um, everything that I saw from it, Chase Mason did a great job. He led his team to victory. The 2 touchdowns in overtime really carried the Bobcats or the Jackrabbits, excuse me, to victory. I think this is one of the biggest examples of you can't just plug and play. Lamson did a good job at quarterback for the Bobcats, but really, even with Adam Jones, potential Walter Payton Player of the Year, it it wasn't enough. Taco Dowler kind of getting used in there, didn't really ever a chance to shine on special teams. Ultimately, the Jackrabbits kept the Bobcats specialty under wraps. They didn't let them shine. They made them earn every bit that they had. So I think just overall, this is a great showing of its dynasty program versus dynasty program, and ultimately the historical data and the historical, results of it just kept true as South Dakota State just has one more edge. And I'm not going to put it all in the quarterback because that's not fair because I don't think that South Dakota State's quarterback is necessarily, um, a record breaker or anything like that. But I think it's just both of them are a little bit muted, but still national contenders. And overall, the missing pieces was one of the hardest things to overcome this time.
I love the FCS because when all the polls come out, first off, I love the FCS because there's not really a poll that's acknowledged. There's like so many that are all kind of, which is cool. They're all kind of taken in and kind of added to the pieces of the puzzle. But very good chance there's an 0-2 team in the top 5 next week still, with Montana State losing to Oregon and then such a barn burner to South Dakota State. And I'll have to kind of take a look at some of the other results to see exactly where they fit in, at least when I'm sure you'll do the same when we fill out our red shirt polls. But it delivered. I think I'll just say that this one delivered as a game of the week. Ben, unfortunately, you were on it. You were on the Jackrabbits, but I don't think either team necessarily showed they were, as two OTs will kind of indicate. Neither team was definitively better, but yeah, South Dakota State just had a couple edges there. And then
Right. And I think just overall, like, this is, like, again, no disrespect when I say it's just a little bit muted from years past. It's just there's not necessarily as many um, FCS superstars per se on these teams here. It's still guys that are going to get drafted, guys that are going to go on to be award winners or award finalists. It's just a bit muted from years past, and I think that it has to be acknowledged just going forward is Montana State, South Dakota State, premier teams in the FCS for sure, but going against North Dakota State, going against, I mean, even Montana. Montana doesn't look amazing right out the gate necessarily either. But I think, can either of these dethrone North Dakota State? And it gives me more pause than years past. Not taking any respect away from them. It's just North Dakota State is a machine that keeps on giving.
yeah, it really is. I think that's the perfect way to describe it. It truly is. It's a machine. But let's move forward to the game we kind of talked about. This is probably I am living and dying by Sacramento State at this point. I dug my heels in. I'm going to probably pick them in every matchup coming up aside from maybe one, but they lost the one game this week that could possibly be as heartbreaking as UNC's loss to CSU, because they were leading with over 2 minutes left, 22. What was the final score? 20. They were leading
2017,
seven.
I think.
Yeah, it was 17. Then the math would be 17-13. Um, Backup quarterback, what's his name? So I have it because he played well. The Tulsa transfer. And now of course I can't use a
Oh, and you just told
computer.
me too.
Cardell
Yeah.
Williams. Cardell Williams interception as he was hit, throwing the ball with just over 2 minutes to play in a lead. Pick six. Nevada goes up 20-17. Then Sac State, unshaken, recovers, drives down the field, scores on two separate plays, both plays called back by holdings. And like you said, Brendan Marion with the quote of the weekend, if you're gonna you have to obviously you have to decisively beat a team when you play FCS FBS games. And I don't know if he was specifically saying if there's any chance the refs are going to bail him out, they will, but that's exactly how I took it, and that's how I'm going to choose to take that until I forget that he said it.
That's how I'm choosing to take it as well because it made me feel a sliver better about the CSU robbery that occurred in Fort Collins, Colorado, where there should have been crime scene tape and a chalk outline of where the bears were stolen from. But outside of that, I think ultimately he's right. Is just those bigger levels. They're like when you get to the NFL, they're looking if there's any blades of grass between the dude's white shoe and the white hash mark or the white out of bounds, just to see if there's any blades of grass to see if he maybe was in bounds. It's the scrutiny rises as you rise to the top, and there's probably something to be said for that, but also the ones who are playing real football out here with a real playoff that isn't manufactured by, multi-million dollar sponsors. I think we're all just a bit tired of it. However ticky tacky those holding calls were for the Hornets, I'm sure they're just livid about it. I'm sure that's gonna sting for a little while. Could have had a payday and a win, but ultimately, ball security came down to both of our results. Is Gibson could have been just a hair more careful with the ball. Cardell could have been a hair more careful with time management or the ball, or maybe just Marion could have been a little bit less go, a little bit more slow in that 2 minute time. But yeah, it's just things you look back on that would have solidified the result that are just like, ugh, that's tough. But yeah, ultimately the Hornets stung themselves through the foot multiple times.
Yeah, and then that one, I still believe in Sac State. That's an unfortunate one, but this was a team where I think there were always going to be some growing pains, and they've come out and performed admirably. Should have won this game last week. They shouldn't have won that one. That would have been um, disingenuous to say they should have beat SDSU. But I think a program that I am not wavering off my opinion on yet, because I do still see what I think I saw preseason.
Right. We still need to check up on Jaden Rashada because
Yeah,
hopefully he was
good,
just
great
knocked
point.
out of the game. If it was past that, that could change the the route, the destination that the Hornets are trying to get to throughout the season. Because not saying Cardell can't do it, but obviously making decisions where you scramble around and get a pick six put on you. That's a tough one, especially when you're just about ready to win the game. So if Rashad is not ready, I think that alters their path.
So for the rest of the Big Sky, I'm just gonna go in inverse order of the games I think are the most interesting. So I'll start with the least interesting, and if you have something to say on it, shoot. But if not, we can just read a couple scores, because some of these games don't have any bearing on anything. North Dakota 50, Portland State 20. The Vikes putting up their first points of the year. Wa-
Yeah,
Washington.
expected. I think North Dakota, kudos. I think they're going to be rising in the poll. I think they might be the more interesting of the cousin schools in the Dakotas this year, with South Dakota taking a hit in recruiting and transfers and all that. North Dakota might be interesting, might be spicy.
Washington 70, UC Davis 10.
Can't say much there, but happy payday.
Uh, Utah 63, Cal Poly 9.
Oh, that's tough. I'm glad Cal Poly scored. Um, but yeah, I think when you get in those Pac-12, Big Ten, whatever they count as nowadays games, it's just take that $500,000 and put it right in the bank. It'll help those bruises.
Arizona 48, Weber State 3, in a game that started about 4 hours late because of, I think, weather delays. But
Yeah, weather delays were rampant yesterday. I'm surprised that Arizona was generous enough to let Weber score three.
yeah, Weber missed like a very sad field goal late before they made that one, which was, I can't, it was probably Sicko's committee just based on the content matter of the tweet. And it was like, not the only thing sadder, or the only thing like worse than a sad made field goal is like a sad missed field goal when you're down 40 points and you're like, let's just go ahead and get on the board.
Yeah.
But Montana 42, Central Washington 17.
So
That scores, yeah, go for it.
this one caught my eye at halftime because I was watching that a little bit. Central is interesting. Obviously, Bobby Houck and those guys recouped just fine because it became a very distant score at the end of the game. But halftime was 21-17 Montana. That should not be happening. Like that's the other thing that led me to say, well, maybe not Montana earlier on in our conversation about national contenders, just because Central Washington is a perennial D2 contender. They're a perennial D2 powerhouse. I don't know what Montana's affinity is with scheduling D2 powerhouses. Like they scheduled Ferris State the other year and they won, but it I wouldn't say it did anything for the program. If anything, it just gave shine to Ferris State players. So I think this is a weird one to schedule, and of course they pulled away at halftime, so they did what they needed to do. But ultimately, you shouldn't be 21-17 with a D2 powerhouse if you're going to chase a title.
Then Northern Arizona 31, Utah Tech, or Northern Arizona 38, Utah Tech 31. I apologize. This one a little bit misleading in the final score as well. Utah Tech tacked on the last two touchdowns. So NAU was up 38-17 at one point, but Utah Tech only won one game last year, showing that they're actually a somewhat legitimate program before they move into the Big Sky with Southern Utah next year.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. Southern Utah went to overtime with San Diego, so I think both these programs are kind of on an upswing right now, trying to make themselves look better, give a little bit better of a resume as they're going to join the Big Sky next year, and we say adios to Sac State. Um, so it's going to be interesting. I think they're trying, which is interesting because the perception of them coming into the Big Sky has been vastly negative. Big Sky um, homers and foundation type members just like, really, we don't need more members. We don't need this. But Tom Worcestershire is thinking about all sports, not just football, trying to secure everybody having a solid conference schedule in softball, volleyball, the Olympic sports. So I think kudos to Tom Worcestershire and also kudos to those two teams not looking like dog water. I'm just hoping that we can have a good enough development year ourselves at UNC that we can compete and or beat both of those.
Yeah, and I think not to rehash the bear with us, but I think I'm feeling much more confident that that could be a possibility now. This one, the last two, let's start with New Mexico 32, Idaho State 22. This one was another one that was close late. At this one an earlier kickoff, so I was able to watch a piece of it at like the Ag Day barbecue. Shout out never mind. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but it was cool to see that on the screen. But it was I think 23-22 when I had looked. Yeah, there's some weird scores where New Mexico scored 15 in the fourth quarter. So I don't even know how that maths out without either a missed extra point or 5 field goals. But Idaho State just weird, a weird team right now because the UNLV they almost beat them, and then who was it last week that they came and just laid an egg against a program they shouldn't have laid an egg against? That was um oh yeah, not they 46-24 against Southern Utah, who just lost to San Diego, who Cal Poly I believe blew out last week. So it's that weird early season where nothing really makes any sense. But
100%.
I'm intrigued by Idaho State because I have no idea what to make of them. You know,
I'm intrigued too. I also don't know what the quarterback reason was for Jordan Cook not being the choice there. Um, Ultimately, a very close game. Shouldn't have been. Um, Kochek obviously taking over a project coming from Idaho down to New Mexico, taking Idaho quarterback Jack Lane with him. Jack Lane having a good day. And then, oh gosh, you're going to have to go into the stats for me. Running back,
Scott
big
Trey
time.
Humphrey.
There we go.
I was
Scott
just
Trey
looking at it.
having a day. Because he was Incarnate Word.
He was Montana State, my man.
Oh shoot, my bad. I was getting him mixed up with different Scotty.
I
But
feel you.
yeah, ultimately, I Idaho coach, former Idaho coach, stealing from the Big Sky and making the most of it. I mean, sure, this doesn't look great on the short end of 32-22. Weird score. You get out with a win barely over a now 0-3 Idaho State. But ultimately, Kochak is doing what he needs to. And whether it's weird results or otherwise, he's getting it done down there.
Yeah, and let's move to Coach X's former team, the Idaho Vandals, who I just want to say Northern Arizona drew a bigger crowd for their game against
Oh,
Utah Tech than Idaho did
oh,
against against St. Thomas. Also, we need to do something
oh,
about Tarleton State and St. Thomas. I think Tarleton State will be FBS here soon, so it won't
yeah,
matter. But their logos are too close together, and they're
no,
both
definitely
purple,
agreed.
and they're both STTS. But I think I have a soft spot for St. Thomas because I enjoy their basketball program, even if they did come in and I think hand UNC their one non-conference home loss. But I think they're also a program that's going to be pretty frisky because I don't really have any way to prove this, but they just seem like they have money. They just seem like they have money. And I think that goes further than just about anything else in college sports. But this one, 37-30, but it was kind of one of those. I think Idaho constantly had them at bay. Not maybe not quite, but it was never tied. Idaho was like always ahead. It was 23-37. Yeah, 37-23 kind of in that fourth quarter. So an interesting score. What are your takeaways? I was impressed by Idaho week and a little bit disappointed this week, but that's been kind of like I just said with the San Diego Cal Poly triangle. Like it's just so weird here early in this season.
Yeah, definitely weird for sure. I think impressed by the offense. I like what Joshua Wood and those guys have put together as far as the offense goes. A little bit depressed by the defense. Not just going on wordplay there. It's just St. Tommy's interesting team in football, not necessarily a good team in football. For Idaho to let that much play with the score happen there, I think that's concerning. Um, Definitely makes me rethink where they're going to finish in the Big Sky because obviously offense matters the most at the end of the day. Just because you got to be able to outscore the other guy, even if they score every single time on you. You have to score just one more time than they do. But defensively, I don't like seeing 30 points from a newly Missouri Valley team. Um, that's just not where the Idaho Vandals should be at. I know they lost a lot, and you have to kind of see what you look like after reeling from Kochak coming in and giving the program its first revitalization since dropping down from the FBS. But at the same time, you have to be able to recover from that. No matter what, coaches come and go, and you got to be able to still have a program at the end of the day. I think they have a lot of good working pieces, but defense is going to need some optimization. We are going to go audio only as I go back into the scoreboard. Looking back at the Big Sky, we talked about a lot of good stuff on there. Um, Across the Big Sky, you know, everybody's doing it the best they can, but really just chalk across the board. I think that was the biggest sentiment. Didn't even talk about Boise State, Eastern Washington, 51-14. Not much to get excited about there, except for the uniform combos. Kind of nice colors, but not much nice for Eastern on that one.
Actually, great call, Ben. I That game happened on Friday, and it just complete. I had to just like scrolled down too far, and that one went exactly as expected. But you ready to move on to the pick'em here moving forward?
Yeah. I think we covered all the Big Sky games. Wasn't sure if there was any we missed because I'm, you know, without my lovely stats and whatnot. But ultimately, I think just a chalk week for the Big Sky, and that's what you get sometimes. There was a lot of teams that tried to make it not chalk. Sac State, good effort, just big mistakes on the back end. UNC, obviously, salty ending. But we could have done one or two things that would have made it less contentious in the end, or at least like been like we're trying to defend a CSU score to keep the win per se. So definitely teams tried to make it not chalk, but it ended up all chalk.
Yeah, and moving forward, we have a week that I think will set up to not necessarily be chalk. A lot more, not more light games, but there's a couple interesting ones. So let's start with the. I'm gonna take a executive decision here and start with the one that feels go from the backwards ones that seem least interesting to most. Just like recapping. Um, Probably I'm biased because Portland State just drives apathy in me, but Hawaii, Portland State, um, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Portland State will lose, and Hawaii is gonna take care of business on the island. But good for Portland getting a nice week 3 trip to Hawaii out of the whole deal. And you know what? Who's the real losers? Because UNC's going to Vermilion, South Dakota.
I mean, 3 million can't be that bad, but it's definitely worse than Hawaii. Um, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, wow, what a shellacking of a schedule so far for
I
Portland
know.
State. 0-3 for sure, but at least they get to go to Hawaii, so maybe you can fuddy duddy with some flights and stuff to be able to get some beach time in before or after the game. But either way, they'll have some good sights as they lose.
Okay, then we have Montana State or San Diego at Montana State. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and also say that Montana State's gonna get their first win of the season here.
If they don't beat a non-scholarship team, may as well just check out of playoffs because it's not going to happen.
Oh, nailed it. Mercyhurst at Sac State. I don't know exactly what the deal with Mercyhurst is, but I think that Sac State will be in good shape here. So I'm going to say they get their first win of the season.
I would hope so as well on this one. If Sac State doesn't have their crap together for this, all of the recruiting was for nothing.
All right, then we have now we're getting into some games that actually Western Oregon going to Cal Poly.
Interesting. Makes me want to pick Western Oregon, but gosh, Cal Poly should have. If they were able to score 9 against Utah, they should be able to score 18 against them. So I feel like they should be all right.
All right. Eastern Washington at Northern Iowa. I'm going to cop out and
Oh,
let you pick first here. EWU
yeah,
coming off that drubbing, but then Northern Iowa lost to Wyoming, but big Mountain West opponent, so a little bit different of a situation.
gosh, you really did give me a pick 'em. Um,
I can go first if you want.
I'm gonna go out on a limb, like actually, because I don't believe in them. I'm just gonna pick the home team. Um, I feel like Eastern has a better shot at this game, and they at least have more playmakers. I don't know that they have better players, but they have just faster, more basketball type players. They could at least make a move, even if they're have a shitty scheme or a shitty pass. But ultimately, I'm gonna pick Northern Iowa. I feel like Eastern's in a rut, and they're gonna have to do something special to get out of that rut. Something special would be beating Northern Iowa. I'm just not sure that something special happens this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sold on Eastern Washington at all. They looked a little impressive last week, but then kind of right back to it. Or in week 1 they looked all right, and then kind of right back to what I expected in week 2. But Weber State at McNeese. This McNeese program who's been kind of a little from time to time, it feels like they have some peaks. They're never too high, but you can never really count them out from what I've gathered.
Right. Well, and be my digital assist. What is McNeese's first 2 weeks look like?
I let me pull
Because
that
I'm
up.
I'm tentatively gonna pick them just because of how disappointing and just ultimately like a lack of anything interesting coming out of Weber State.
So in week 1 they smashed Louisiana College 54-9. and then last week they lost to Louisiana Lafayette 34-10. So
That
probably
still
done it.
gives me more more sympathy than their 3 points that was allowed to Weber this week. So I'll go ahead and take McNeese. Call me the Big Sky hater this week. Uh, I don't know. And that one's in Lake Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, lock me down for McNeese for sure.
All right. We have Utah Tech at Idaho. Utah Tech team given a couple different, almost beat UC Davis if we're being real honest, but
Right.
given some Big Sky teams a run for their money here early after a really 1-11 season last year. So, what do you think this one at the Kibby Dome?
I so want to choose Utah Tech, but I think I'm gonna be a sucker. I'm gonna stay home teams, but I'm not gonna be surprised if Utah Tech gives the Fightin' Taters fits all night long. I don't think St. Tommy should have gotten that much play against them. Utah Tech, they're interesting. I like what they're doing. I don't think they've got it quite figured out yet, but I like the effort. I like the results that I've seen so far. Um, Obviously, UC Davis has some stuff to clean up. I don't think they're necessarily a national contender right off the bat, but I think they'll go deep in playoffs. Utah Tech, I think they're flirting with being successful. Gosh, I just if it was in not St. George, but wherever Utah Tech is from, Dixieland over in Utah. If it was there, I would choose them, but I'm gonna choose the Fighting Taters, and I'm gonna say like 3 points.
Okay, I'm also going to go with Idaho. I hate to pick right alongside Ben here, but it just, yeah, I think they're just a better program. And while Utah Tech has been feisty, I don't think they're quite there yet. Um,
If it was in Dixie, Utah, I would have chosen them.
Yet in the second most racist part of the country behind the South. But North Dakota er, going to Montana here. This one probably preseason wasn't much of a one to look forward to, but looking at the national schedule, it's probably the game of the week too. It's definitely our Big Sky game of the week. What are you thinking here, Ben? This one's an interesting one.
Ah, I don't know. I mean, Montana's has done everything right. North Dakota's done everything mostly right. Letting 20 points for Portland State was not okay. Should have blanked the dog shit Starbucks team. But I think ultimately I'm gonna go with North Dakota. I feel like they've got good momentum. I think Montana has um, played a lower strength of schedule than they should have. Not saying Portland State's amazing, but I think North Dakota has just a little bit of an edge to them. Um, I wanted to go out on a limb this whole broadcast, so may as well go with North Dakota.
Man, I was gonna go out on a limb and call North and choose North Dakota, but I'm working in an early deficit here because you we it was a very chalk week last week. I went and picked Montana State and Sac State, which ultimately I don't think either are bad picks. Both proved to be quite close games, but I'm going to go with the Grizzlies. I don't believe in them one bit. Let's be honest, but I gotta make it interesting. Also, it's a home game, and this just feels like one that they win, even though it's just a weird one. Um,
And game of the week, it's worth two, so you can make up 66% of what you lost last week.
Exactly. And and now I come back to you with my tail tucked between my legs, Ben. I was confident that there's only one more game left, and I completely missed Southern Utah hosting Northern Arizona in a future Big Sky matchup. So we'll regress a bit and go back to a one pointer,
Oh,
but this is probably
let me
the
just
second.
melt in my chair as that one sucks too, because that's a pick 'em because Northern Arizona is playing down from what's expected. Southern Utah playing up from what's expected. God,
I don't know,
where is that
Southern
one at?
Utah with
Because
the loss to who did they lose to yesterday?
San
Oh
Diego,
yeah.
but even as disrespectful as that is, San Diego is the top of the heap of the non-scholarship team. So, that is a problem. They shouldn't have done that, but at the
Oh no,
same
Cal
time,
Poly handled San Diego. which I keep going back to, but is
I don't
wild
know
to me.
because this should be a rivalry game as well. I don't remember what their trophy is, but I'm gonna go with Northern Arizona because I feel like Ty Pennington is a bit more consistent than what Southern Utah has shown so far. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was a stupid close result for absolutely no reason other than just the teams know each other.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Ben. I think that NAU is going to win, and I think NAU's I think I've been disrespectful to NAU so far, and uh I think they deserve a little more respect than I've been giving them. I think they win this one handily. I think they showed out well against Arizona State, and then last week took care of business. So I'm gonna go NAU as much as I do want to disagree with you there.
Fair enough. I mean, we'll see if Pennington can get it done.